Hi guys, and welcome to Quiet History Vault. Tonight we step into a dim, smoky morning that feels older than memory itself. You're not scrolling a phone or reaching for a bedside lamp. You're lying on a pallet of straw and wool, half awake listening to the slow breathing of people and animals around you. Somewhere in the darkness a rooster gives a confused crow. Somewhere closer a log settles in the hearth with a soft crack. You blink trying to remember where you are, and then the truth settles in like the cold. You probably will not survive this. Not because danger leaps from every shadow, but because life here is relentless, physical, and very real. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And while you're settling in, tell me your location and local time in the comments. I love seeing how far this quiet little journey travels. Now dim the lights and let your mind drift as you wake into a medieval morning. The first thing you notice is the chill. It sits on your skin like an invisible weight. The wool blanket scratches faintly against your neck, and when you pull it tighter, the smell of smoke and old hay rises gently toward your nose. This is not unpleasant exactly. It is simply what the world smells like here. You breathe in, slow and careful, tasting ash on the back of your tongue. Outside, the sky has not yet decided whether to become day. A faint greyness presses against the tiny shuttered opening in the wall. A simple historical truth anchors you. Most people in medieval Europe lived in rural communities bound closely to the land and to seasonal rhythms. Your life begins and ends with the soil beneath your feet. It is a fact that shapes everything else you will experience. You hear someone stirring nearby, a soft rustle of fabric, a sleepy cough. There are no separate bedrooms here. Privacy is more dream than reality. You push yourself upright. The pallet creaks faintly. Your fingers brush against straw that pokes through rough cloth. A strange little detail crosses your mind. In some regions, people believe certain herbs tucked into bedding could ward off nightmares or even mischievous spirits. Whether this ever worked is anyone's guess. Still, the faint scent of dried lavender or thyme would have been a small comfort in a world where science feels distant and mysterious. The hearth holds the centre of the room like a quiet guardian. Its embers glow dimly, giving just enough light to outline shapes. A pot hangs above it, blackened by years of smoke. You can almost hear yesterday's meal lingering inside it. Your stomach gives a gentle reminder that hunger is never far away. The floor beneath your bare feet is hard-packed earth, cool and slightly damp. Each step makes you aware of your own body of muscles that will soon be called into service. You pause, listening. Beyond the walls comes the low murmur of animals shifting in their pens. A cow exhales. A chicken scratches. The medieval household often includes livestock under the same roof, especially in colder months. This arrangement conserves warmth, though it also creates a symphony of smells and sounds that would astonish modern sensibilities. You find yourself oddly grateful for the shared heat. Historians still argue whether people in this era truly slept in one long stretch through the night or in two separate phases with a period of quiet wakefulness between. As you sit there in the half-light, this debate feels less academic and more personal. Perhaps you had already woken once hours ago, listening to the wind and the faint movement of others. Perhaps this second waking is simply how your body has learned to follow darkness and dawn. Your hand drifts to your hair. It feels tangled, slightly gritty with soot. Cleanliness will mean something different here. Water is heavy to carry and often cold enough to sting. Bathing exists, of course, though not with the casual frequency many of us expect. Instead, you might wash your face or hands with a basin near the door, splashing away sleep as best you can. The shock of it will wake you faster than any modern alarm. A figure moves past you wrapped in a cloak that smells faintly of sheep and rain. There is no need for words. Everyone knows the routine. Fire must be coaxed back to life. Tools must be gathered. Animals must be fed before human hunger is satisfied. You watch as dry twigs are placed carefully among the embers. A gentle breath, a spark, then a slow, patient bloom of flame. The room warms by a single degree. It feels like a miracle. You notice the walls now. They are made of wattle and daub, a mixture of woven sticks and mud that holds surprisingly firm against wind and weather. Small cracks trace patterns like tiny rivers across their surface. Through one of these gaps you glimpse the paling sky. Dawn is coming, whether you are ready or not. There is a softness in this moment too. Someone hums under their breath. The tune is simple, repetitive, almost hypnotic. Music here does not require instruments or audiences. It is simply another way of breathing. You realize that comfort in this world is often found in small shared habits. A song, a warm cup, the steady presence of others. These things matter more than luxury. Your fingers brush against a wooden cup set near the hearth. Inside is the faint residue of last night's drink. Ale perhaps watered down and mild. In many places it is safer than untreated water. This is not indulgence. It is practicality shaped by necessity. You take a cautious sip of whatever remains. It tastes sour and earthy. Your face tightens, then relaxes. You will learn to accept such flavours as normal. Outside, a breeze slips through the doorway carrying the scent of damp soil and distant wood smoke. It promises work. It promises effort. It promises that by nightfall your body will feel very different from how it feels now. You stretch, feeling joints protest gently. There is no concept of a leisurely morning routine. Time belongs to daylight, and daylight is already waiting. A small, almost whimsical thought surfaces. Some medieval people believed that dreams could foretell events or reveal hidden truths. You try to remember what you were dreaming just moments ago. The images fade like mist. Perhaps that is for the best. In a life so rooted in the physical, the future is often measured not in visions, but in the next harvest, the next storm, the next winter. You stand at last. The world tilts slightly, then steadies. Around you movement increases. Footsteps, whispered instructions, the soft clatter of simple tools being gathered. The day has begun, whether anyone has formally declared it so. You take one more look at the dim interior, committing its textures to memory. This is home. It is harsh, imperfect, and deeply human. As you move toward the doorway, the first pale light touches your face. It feels like stepping into a story you cannot yet see the ending of. Behind you, the hearth crackles with new life. Ahead of you, the medieval morning waits with quiet certainty. You draw a breath that tastes of smoke and possibility, then take your first step into a different reality. The cold light of early morning follows you outside like a quiet companion. Dew clings to the grass and darkens the packed earth beneath your feet. You pause for a moment, letting your eyes adjust. Shapes slowly gain meaning. A crooked fence, a low roof stitched with patches of straw. A thin path that winds toward fields you cannot yet fully see. The world feels mute as if wrapped in wool just like you. Dressing here is not about expression. It is about readiness. You glance down at yourself and become suddenly aware of every texture against your skin. A linen undertunic rests closest to your body. It is coarse but breathable, designed to absorb sweat and keep heavier fabrics from chafing too badly. Over this, a wool garment offers warmth and protection. Wool dominates medieval wardrobes for good reason. It repels light rain traps heat and survives hard labour better than most materials available at the time. A well-known historical detail settles into your awareness. Clothing was valuable in medieval society. Garments often took weeks or months to produce by hand, from spinning thread to weaving cloth to careful stitching. Even simple outfits represented labour and skill. You find yourself treating your own sleeves with unexpected respect. Each seam tells a quiet story of effort. You bend to adjust your shoes. They are made of leather, stiff and slightly damp from yesterday's work. The soles are thin enough that you can feel stones and roots beneath you. Walking will become an intimate conversation between your feet and the land. There is no barrier of foam or rubber here, only hide earth and endurance. A curious and slightly amusing tidbit drifts through your mind. In certain places, pointed shoes once became fashionable among wealthier individuals. The toes could be so long that they had to be tied to the leg with cords to prevent tripping. Practicality did not always win against trends even in the past. You glance at your own modest footwear with relief. Today, survival matters more than style. Someone hands you a belt. It is simple, functional, and essential. Belts hold tools, pouches, and sometimes small knives used for daily tasks. You fasten it around your waist and feel an odd sense of completion pull in, as if the act itself signals readiness. Around you, others perform the same ritual without thinking. Dressing is less a personal choice and more a collective preparation for the hours ahead. The air smells of damp wool manure and the faint sweetness of crushed grass. You pull a hood over your head, instinctively shielding yourself from the breeze. Head coverings serve many purposes in this world. They keep warmth close, they guard against sun. They also reflect modesty customs shaped by local beliefs and traditions. In many communities, uncovered hair might draw unwanted attention or signal carelessness. Historians still argue whether medieval people thought about fashion in ways similar to modern consumers. Some evidence suggests they absolutely did, using colour and decoration to express identity or status. Other scholars emphasise how limited choices remained for the majority. As you stand there in garments chosen more by necessity than desire, you feel the weight of that debate. Perhaps the truth lies somewhere between aspiration and constraint. You notice patches on your sleeves now. Rough stitches cloak small tears, creating a pattern of repairs that feels almost decorative in its own right. Clothing here lives long lives. Fabric is reused, reshaped, handed down. Nothing is wasted if it can still serve a purpose. This mindset shapes not only wardrobes but entire ways of thinking. Resourcefulness becomes second nature. A child runs past you, laughter bright against the grey morning. His tunic is shorter, allowing easier movement. His legs are bare despite the cold. Youth carries its own form of insulation, it seems. You smile despite yourself. For a moment, the hardship of the setting softens into something almost tender. You tug your sleeves down and flex your hands. Fingers must remain nimble for tasks ahead. Gloves exist, but not always for everyone. Skin will toughen with time. Small cuts and calluses become quiet badges of participation in this shared struggle. You sense already how your body will change, adapting to rhythms older than any written rule. A faint bell rings in the distance. Its sound drifts over fields and rooftops like a reminder that individual lives here unfold within larger structures of time and authority. Whether calling people to prayer or marking the start of work, such signals guide daily movement. You find yourself listening closely, learning to read meaning into each tone. The sky brightens another shade. Colours emerge slowly from the monochrome hush. Brown earth, green shoots, grey smoke rising in thin columns. You realise that dressing is only the first step in becoming part of this landscape. Your clothing helps you belong here, helps you move through this environment without constant friction. Someone adjusts your hood with a quick practice gesture. No words are needed. Care is often expressed through small acts like this. You feel the warmth of human connection in the simplest touch. In a world where comfort is scarce, these gestures matter profoundly. You begin to walk towards the path leading out of the cluster of houses. Each step feels more certain now. The garments that seemed strange moments ago start to feel like extensions of yourself. You are wrapped not only in wool and linen, but in expectation, duty, and quiet resilience. Behind you, the village continues its steady awakening. Doors open, buckets scrape across thresholds. A dog barks once then settles. The day gathers momentum like a cart beginning to roll downhill. You take a deep breath of cool morning air and move forward, dressed not for appearance but for survival, ready to discover what the medieval world will ask of you next. Your steps carry you toward the centre of the village, guided more by instinct than by any clear plan. Hunger begins to rise gently in your body, not as a sharp pain, but as a steady reminder. Morning work will require strength. Strength must come from something, even if that something feels modest by modern standards. The smell of cooking drifts toward you long before you see its source. It is warm, earthy, and faintly sour. Your stomach answers with quiet urgency. You enter a low doorway and feel the air shift around you. Inside, the light is softer, filtered through smoke and shadow. A pot simmers over the fire, releasing small bubbles that break with patient rhythm. Someone stirs it slowly, using a wooden spoon worn smooth by years of use. This is breakfast. Not a feast spread across polished tables, but a practical beginning to another demanding day. A simple historical fact settles into place. For most medieval people, the morning meal was light or sometimes skipped entirely, especially during busy seasons. When it did exist, it often centered on bread or a basic porridge known as pottage. This mixture of grains, vegetables, and whatever scraps were available could be reheated again and again, changing slightly in flavor with each passing day. You watch the surface of the pot ripple and realize that what you're about to eat carries yesterday within it. A rough wooden bowl is placed in your hands. Its rim is chipped, its sides stained by countless meals. You cradle it carefully, feeling the heat seep into your fingers. Steam rises toward your face, carrying scents of barley, onion, and perhaps a hint of cabbage. You take a cautious sip. The taste is plain, almost stubbornly so. Yet it fills your mouth with warmth that spreads slowly through your chest. You chew a piece of dark bread dense enough to demand real effort. Medieval bread could be coarse, made from grains that still held fragments of husk or grit. There is a strange satisfaction in the resistance. Eating here is not passive. It is an act of engagement between body and sustenance. You feel grounded in a way that surprises you. A quirky detail floats into your awareness. In some communities, people once used hollowed-out loaves of bread as makeshift bowls called trenchers. After absorbing juices and sauces, these edible containers might be eaten, given to the poor, or even fed to animals. You glance at your own bowl and wonder how many such improvisations shaped daily survival. Necessity encourages creativity in the most unexpected ways. A jug is passed around. The liquid inside is weak-ale cloudy and slightly bitter. You hesitate and take a small drink. It is not meant for indulgence. It provides calories and in many places a safer alternative to untreated water sources. The sensation lingers on your tongue, unfamiliar but oddly reassuring. Everyone else drinks without ceremony. You follow their example. Historians still argue whether medieval diets were as monotonous as they were often portrayed. Some evidence suggests remarkable variety depending on region and season. Other interpretations emphasize how limited options could become during hard times. As you sit there with your bowl, the debate feels distant yet relevant. What matters now is that this simple meal will carry you through the next stretch of labour. Around you, conversation unfolds in low murmurs. Words drift like smoke, blending into the crackle of firewood and the occasional scrape of spoon against wood. There is no sense of rushing. Even in a life defined by urgency, moments of shared stillness find their way into the routine. You feel yourself relaxing just slightly as warmth settles deeper into your limbs. A child watches you with open curiosity. He dips his bread into the pot with a practiced motion, then grins as a drop of broth escapes down his chin. Someone wipes it away with gentle amusement. The scene holds a quiet tenderness that feels timeless. Hunger, nourishment, care. These are universal languages. You become aware of your own senses sharpening. The smoky ceiling, the glow of embers, the rhythm of chewing and swallowing. Modern distractions feel very far away. In their absence, even the simplest breakfast takes on a kind of significance. You're not just eating, you're participating in a chain of survival that stretches across generations. Another ladle of pottage is offered. You accept without hesitation. The second portion tastes slightly different, as if hidden flavors have revealed themselves. Perhaps a fragment of carrot has softened into sweetness. Perhaps your palate is simply adjusting. Either way, you feel gratitude rising quietly within you. Outside, the day grows brighter. Light slips through the doorway in pale ribbons, touching the floor like a promise. Work waits. Fields need tending, animals need feeding, tools need lifting. You finish your meal with a final bite of bread, savouring the way it grounds you in the present moment. A final sip from the jug leaves a faint warmth in your chest. You set the bowl aside, noticing how quickly it is rinsed, and return to its place. Nothing lingers unused for long. Efficiency is not a luxury here. It is a necessity shaped by long experience. You step back into the morning with new energy, feeling the difference that food has made. It is not abundance, it is enough. Sometimes enough is the most precious gift a day can offer. You draw a steady breath, tasting smoke and damp earth once more, and begin to move toward whatever tasks await, carrying the quiet strength of a humble breakfast within you. The warmth from breakfast lingers faintly in your chest as you return toward the dwelling that now feels in a quiet and unexpected way like your own. Morning light has strengthened, yet the interior remains dim when you step through the low doorway again. Your eyes take a moment to adjust. Shapes emerge slowly like memories forming. The hearth glows with renewed confidence, sending soft waves of heat across the packed earth floor. You pause just inside, letting the sounds of the outside world fade behind you. Here the rhythm is different. Slower perhaps, but no less purposeful. The house itself is a living space in every sense. It shelters warm stores and gathers together the fragile threads of daily existence. You run your fingers lightly along the wall and feel its uneven texture. Mud, straw and timber blend into a surface that seems both sturdy and temporary. Everything here feels like it belongs to the earth and will one day return to it. A widely accepted historical understanding comes to mind. Most medieval homes for ordinary people were built with locally available materials, often wattle and daub set upon simple wooden frames. These structures could last for years with careful maintenance, yet they required constant attention. Cracks needed filling, roofs needed rethatching. A home was not a finished product, it was an ongoing relationship between people and place. You notice movement near the hearth. A hen has wandered inside, pecking curiously at scattered crumbs. The presence of animals indoors no longer surprises you. In colder seasons, livestock might share living quarters to conserve warmth and reduce the risk of theft. The arrangement brings both comfort and complication. Feathers drift across the floor. The faint smell of manure mingles with wood smoke. You wrinkle your nose, then relax as familiarity begins to dull the edge of discomfort. An unusual little detail surfaces in your thoughts. In some regions, dried herbs were hung from rafters not only for cooking, but also to discourage insects and freshen the air. Whether their effectiveness matched the belief is uncertain, yet the sight of bundled plants swaying gently overhead creates an atmosphere that feels both practical and faintly mystical. You brush against one cluster and release a sharp green scent that clears your mind. You move closer to the fire and extend your hands toward its glow. Fleas and other tiny pests were common companions in medieval households drawn by warmth and fabric. People developed countless methods to manage them, from frequent combing to shaking out bedding in the sun. You glance toward the pallet where you woke earlier and imagine it airing outside later in the day. Maintenance never truly ends. There is a quiet conversation unfolding nearby. Voices overlap, punctuated by small bursts of laughter. You cannot follow every word, yet the tone speaks of familiarity. Living in close quarters fosters a sense of shared existence that modern walls often prevent. Privacy is limited, but companionship is rarely in short supply. You feel yourself becoming part of this network of presence, of listening and being heard. Scholars continue to debate how people perceived comfort in such environments. Some argue that expectations were shaped by necessity, and that individuals did not experience hardship in the same way we might imagine. Others suggest that longing for improvement was as human then as it is now. As you sit on a low stool and observe the room, you sense that both perspectives hold truth. There is resilience here, yet also quiet aspiration. You notice the roof beams now darkened by years of smoke. Thin shafts of light slip through tiny gaps in the thatch, illuminating floating particles that drift like slow snow. The sight feels oddly beautiful. Imperfection creates its own kind of poetry. You breathe deeply, letting the mingled scents of ash wool and herbs settle into your awareness. A pot is moved aside, revealing a small chest tucked near the wall. Inside lie folded garments, a carved spoon, perhaps a keepsake wrapped carefully in cloth. Possessions are few, yet each carries weight. Ownership here is less about accumulation and more about continuity. Objects serve as anchors in a world where change can arrive suddenly. You hear the faint scratching of mice behind the wall. No one seems alarmed. Such sounds are part of the background music of life. Traps may be set later. For now, attention remains focused on tasks that cannot wait. You find yourself adopting the same priorities, learning to distinguish between inconvenience and true threat. A breeze slips through the doorway, lifting the edge of a hanging cloth. Sunlight brightens the interior just enough to reveal faces more clearly. Lines of fatigue, yes, but also determination. You realize that this home is not merely a shelter from weather. It is a workshop of survival, a stage upon which daily courage is quietly performed. You stand and stretch, feeling stiffness ease slightly. The room feels smaller than before, yet also more intimate. Each corner holds a story waiting to be told. Each crack in the wall marks a season endured. You run your hand once more across the rough surface, acknowledging its role in keeping you safe through the night. Outside voices call. The day is gathering speed again, urging you forward. You take one last look at the hearth, at the drifting herbs, at the hen now perched confidently near the doorway. Home here is not an escape from reality. It is reality itself, shaped by smoke, warmth, crowding, and the quiet persistence of human hope. You step back into the open air with a deeper understanding of what shelter means in this different world. Behind you, the house settles into its steady breathing. Ahead, fields and paths stretch beneath a brightening sky. You feel both grounded and restless, aware that every return indoors will carry new layers of meaning as this journey continues. The air outside greets you with a brighter confidence now. Morning has fully claimed the sky, washing the land in pale gold and soft shadow. You step onto the narrow path that winds away from the cluster of dwellings, feeling the firmness of earth beneath your thin soles. Each stride seems to awaken something in your body. Muscles stretch, breath deepens. The quiet stillness of waking hours gives way to purposeful motion. Work begins long before the sun reaches its highest arc. This is not simply tradition, it is necessity shaped by the limits of daylight and the demands of survival. You follow others toward open fields that roll gently beyond the village. A faint mist lingers close to the ground, curling around your ankles like a slow-moving tide. Somewhere in the distance, a wooden cart creaks its rhythm, steady and patient. A commonly recognized historical reality becomes clear as you walk. Agricultural labor dominated daily life for the vast majority of medieval people. Tasks followed seasonal cycles from planting and weeding to harvesting and storing. Your own hands will soon join this long chain of effort. You feel a mixture of curiosity and quiet resolve. The smell of damp soil grows stronger as you approach a patch of cultivated land. Rows of young plants stretch toward the light, their leaves trembling slightly in the breeze. Someone hands you a simple tool, its wooden handle polished by years of use. You grip it carefully, testing its weight. It feels heavier than expected, not because of its size, because of what it represents: responsibility, continuity, the unspoken agreement that everyone must contribute. You begin by loosening the earth around tender shoots. The motion is repetitive yet oddly soothing. Lift, press, turn again. Your body finds a rhythm that seems older than language. Birds call overhead, punctuating the steady scrape of metal against soil. You become aware of the sun warming the back of your neck, of sweat forming at your temples. Labour here is intimate. It draws you fully into the present moment. An unusual fragment of historical life drifts into your thoughts. In certain communities, people once believed that specific days were more favourable for planting or harvesting, guided by lunar cycles or local superstition. Whether these practices influence crop success remains uncertain, yet they reveal a deep desire to align human effort with the wider patterns of nature. As you work, you glance at the sky and wonder how many hopes have been cast upward like silent prayers. Nearby, a group of workers moves in quiet coordination. No one issues commands. Experience guides action. You notice how tasks shift seamlessly from one person to another, like parts of a larger organism adjusting to maintain balance. This collective instinct fascinates you. It suggests that survival here depends not only on strength, but also on trust. Scholarly conversations continue about how medieval peasants perceived their labour. Some interpretations describe it as relentless burden. Others emphasise moments of pride and connection to the land. As you straighten your back and wipe sweat from your brow, you sense both truths coexisting. Fatigue settles into your muscles, yet there is also satisfaction in seeing rows of soil transformed by your own effort. Time unfolds differently in the fields. Without clocks or schedules marked on screens, you measure progress through changing light and shifting shadows. The sun climbs higher. The mist dissolves. Colours sharpen. A patch of blue sky widens above you like an open door. You pause briefly to stretch your arms and listen. The world hums with activity. Insects buzz. Tools scream, voices rise and fall like distant wave. A young woman passes carrying a bundle of weeds, her expression focused yet calm. She nods in greeting. You return the gesture feeling a spark of shared purpose. Work fosters connections that words alone might never create. In this landscape, relationships are built through action rather than conversation. Hunger begins to stir again, gentler this time. The morning meal has carried you forward, but energy drains steadily with each movement. You become aware of how precious every bite of food truly is. Nothing is taken for granted. Each harvest holds the promise of survival through colder months yet to come. You kneel once more and continue tending the fragile plants. Dirt gathers beneath your fingernails. Your shoulders ache. Yet somewhere within the discomfort lies a quiet transformation. You are learning the language of effort, of persistence, of patience that stretches across generations. A distant bell rings faintly, its tone drifting across fields like a reminder that life here is guided by rhythms, both natural and communal. You lift your head, listening until the sound fades. Then you return to your task, grounded by the certainty that work is not merely something you do. It is something that shapes who you become. As the sun approaches its highest point, you sense the morning drawing toward its close. Tools slow, movements soften. A break will come soon, bringing brief relief and perhaps another simple meal. For now, you take one more steady breath, tasting the mingled scents of earth and sweat. The medieval day stretches ahead with quiet determination, and you step forward into it, carrying the growing strength of your own resilience. You leave the edge of the fields with soil still clinging to your hands, and the steady hum of labour echoing softly in your thoughts. The path back toward the heart of the settlement feels warmer, now dust rising faintly beneath each step. Voices reach you before the buildings do. They blend into a gentle chorus of greeting, small disputes, laughter, and the constant murmur of shared existence. The village reveals itself not as a collection of houses, but as a living network. Every doorway opens onto a story. Every narrow lane carries traces of countless journeys taken before yours. You slow your pace, becoming aware that movement here is rarely solitary. Someone walks beside you without invitation or explanation. It feels natural, as if companionship is the default setting of this world. A familiar historical pattern becomes evident as you observe the flow of people around you. Medieval communities were tightly interwoven, bound by kinship obligation and mutual dependence. The success of one household often influenced the well-being of many others. You sense this truth in the way neighbours exchange nods or brief words that hold layers of meaning. Cooperation is not merely encouraged, it is essential. A woman kneels near a doorway, scrubbing a wooden bucket with determined strokes. She glances up, offers a quick smile, then returns to her task. Clean water must be carried from a shared source. Firewood must be gathered and divided. Each chore connects individuals to the wider rhythm of the settlement. You feel yourself drawn into that rhythm, your own footsteps aligning with an invisible pattern. An intriguing fragment of everyday life surfaces in your thoughts. In some villages, informal gatherings known as gossip sessions served as both entertainment and social regulation. News travelled swiftly along these channels, shaping reputations and reinforcing communal expectations. You notice two elders seated on a bench, their heads bent together in quiet conversation. Their expressions suggest that important matters are being weighed, even if the topic is as simple as the condition of a neighbour's fence. You continue walking, passing a small open space where children chase one another in circles. Their laughter rings out like bright bells, momentarily dissolving the weight of adult concerns. Games here require little more than imagination and energy. A stick becomes a sword. A patch of grass becomes a kingdom. You watch them with a mixture of amusement and reflection, recognizing how play offers a brief escape from the demands waiting just beyond childhood. Academic voices still debate how much privacy individuals truly experienced in such environments. Some suggest that constant proximity fostered deep bonds and emotional resilience. Others argue that it also generated tension and limited personal freedom. As you navigate the narrow lane, brushing shoulders with passers-by, you feel the truth of both perspectives. Connection and constraint coexist in every shared space. A faint scent of baking drifts toward you, mingling with the sharper notes of livestock and smoke. You follow it instinctively to a communal oven where several villagers gather. Loaves are being sidden into the heat with long wooden paddles. The sight is mesmerizing. Bread here is not only nourishment, it is a symbol of collective effort, from sowing grain to grinding flour to tending the fire that transforms dough into sustenance. Someone offers you a small task. Hold this basket, watch that child, carry this message. You accept without hesitation, discovering how easily responsibility spreads from one set of hands to another. Participation becomes a quiet form of belonging. The more you contribute, the more firmly you are woven into the fabric of daily life. You pause near a well, its stone rim worn smooth by generations of touch. Women lower buckets with practiced ease, their movements synchronized like a slow dance. Water rises glistening in the sun. The simple act of drawing it feels ceremonial. You cup your hands and take a cautious sip. Coolness floods your senses, grounding you in the present moment. A dog trots past, tail wagging, pausing to inspect your unfamiliar scent before continuing on its self-appointed patrol. Animals here serve practical roles, yet they also bring comfort and companionship. You find yourself smiling as the creature disappears around a corner. The afternoon light begins to soften, casting long shadows that stretch across the packed earth. Conversations grow quieter. Work resumes in smaller pockets throughout the settlement. You notice how swiftly moods can shift, guided by subtle cues in tone and gesture. This sensitivity to communal atmosphere becomes another skill you're slowly acquiring. You lean against a wooden post and watch as a cart rattles by its wheels, sending up small clouds of dust. Inside it lie bundles of reeds destined for roof repairs. Maintenance never rests. Every season demands preparation for the next. You feel a growing respect for the resilience required to sustain such a cycle year after year. A bell sounds faintly from a distant structure, its resonance drifting through the air, like a reminder that time here is measured collectively. You listen until the final vibration fades, then push yourself away from the post. The village breathes around you, alive with purpose and quiet determination. As you continue along the lane, you sense how deeply human connection shapes this landscape. No one stands entirely alone. Every glance, every shared task, every whispered exchange reinforces the understanding that survival is a communal achievement. You draw a steady breath, tasting smoke bread and sun-warmed dust. With renewed awareness, you step forward into the ongoing story of a world that moves as one body. The sun now hangs higher in the sky, bathing the village in a gentle brightness that reveals details you might have missed before. Dust sparkles faintly in the air. The distant murmur of work continues like a steady pulse beneath everything. Yet as you move along the familiar paths, another awareness begins to rise within you. Life here is not only about toil and routine, it is also about how people care for their bodies in ways shaped by circumstance rather than modern expectation. You notice a woman carrying a wooden basin toward a shaded patch near the well. Steam curls softly above the water. The sight draws your curiosity. You follow at a respectful distance, feeling the warmth of the day on your skin. Cleanliness here is not absent. It simply unfolds according to different priorities and possibilities. A widely accepted observation among historians becomes clear as you watch. Medieval people did wash often more regularly than popular myths suggest. Hands and faces were commonly rinsed, and bathing could occur in rivers' public bathhouses, or makeshift tubs depending on local custom and available resources. The idea that everyone lived in constant filth belongs more to later imagination than to lived reality. You begin to sense the nuance hidden within such everyday practices. The woman kneels and dips a cloth into the steaming basin. She wrings it out with practiced efficiency, then presses it against her arms. The motion is slow and deliberate, almost meditative. You feel a sudden appreciation for the luxury of warm water, for the simple relief it offers tired muscles. When she gestures for you to try, you hesitate only a moment before accepting. The cloth touches your skin and releases a gentle wave of comfort. Dirt loosens, sweat fades. A faint herbal scent rises, sharp and refreshing. Someone must have added crushed leaves or flowers to the water. This small detail reveals a quiet creativity in maintaining well-being. Even within limitations, people find ways to introduce care and intention into daily routines. An unexpected fragment of cultural practice drifts through your thoughts. In certain towns, communal bathhouses once served as social centres where news was exchanged and friendships strengthened. These spaces could also attract criticism from moral authorities concerned about impropriety. The balance between health, leisure and social order has always been delicate. You glance around and wonder how many such debates shape the rhythms of past communities. Nearby laundry flaps gently on a line strung between two posts. Tunics and linens sway in the breeze like silent flags marking the territory of domestic diligence. Washing clothes demands strength and patience. Fabric must be soaked, scrubbed, rinsed, then dried in sunlight. That also serves as a natural purifier. You watch as someone beats a garment against a flat stone, the sharp sound echoing across the yard. Scholars continue to examine how medieval concepts of hygiene evolved over time, influenced by medical theories, religious beliefs, and practical necessity. Some argue that bathing declined in certain regions during later centuries due to fears about disease transmission. Others highlight evidence of continued washing traditions. As you stand with damp hands cooling in the air, the complexity of these interpretations feels tangible. Human habits rarely follow a single path. You turn toward a small stream at the edge of the settlement. Its water glints invitingly beneath overhanging branches. Children splash near its shallows, their laughter blending with the gentle rush of current over stones. You kneel and scoop a handful of the cool liquid, letting it trickle through your fingers. The sensation is both invigorating and grounding, a reminder that nature remains the primary source of refreshment in this world. A man nearby trims his beard with careful strokes of a small blade, using the stream's surface as a makeshift mirror. Grooming here is an act of practicality rather than vanity. Yet it also reflects a desire for dignity and self-respect that transcends era. You sense how maintaining one's appearance even in modest ways contributes to social harmony. The breeze shifts, carrying with it the scent of sun-warmed grass and distant cooking fires. You take a deep breath, noticing how much lighter you feel after washing. Clean skin lifts the spirit as well as the body. Fatigue loosens its grip. Thoughts seem clearer, more focused. You return the cloth to its owner with a quiet nod of gratitude. She smiles, eyes crinkling at the corners. No words are needed. Shared understanding flows as easily as the water you have just used. In this moment, the boundaries between necessity and comfort blur into something surprisingly gentle. As you walk back toward the centre of the village, droplets still clinging to your wrists, you realise that cleanliness here is less about perfection and more about persistence. Small acts repeated day after day create a sense of order within an unpredictable world. You feel yourself adopting this mindset, learning to value incremental care over unattainable ideals. The afternoon stretches ahead, filled with tasks yet to be completed. But now you carry with you the quiet reassurance that even in a life defined by hardship, moments of renewal can be found. You glance at your reflection in a polished metal surface hanging near a doorway. It is faint and distorted, yet enough to show a face that is beginning to belong to this place. With renewed clarity, you step forward once more, ready to continue exploring the subtle realities of medieval existence. The path before you shimmers slightly in the sun, inviting you onward into the next chapter of this unfolding day. The freshness from washing lingers softly on your skin as the afternoon deepens. Sunlight now carries a warmer tone, turning fields into rippling seas of green and gold. You walk beyond the cluster of houses, again following a narrow track that leads toward gardens, granaries, and the quiet heart of medieval survival. Hunger has not yet returned in full force, but you feel its promise waiting somewhere in the distance. Food shapes the rhythm of this world more powerfully than any bell or decree. You pause beside a small plot of land bordered by rough stones. Rows of vegetables grow in careful order. Onions push upward through dark soil. Cabbages spread broad leaves that hold tiny beads of moisture. A figure bends over the plants, loosening earth with a steady motion that suggests long familiarity. You watch for a moment, realizing how deeply life here depends on the success of such monstrosities. A well-established historical insight comes to mind. Medieval diets relied heavily on what could be grown locally and preserved for leaner months. Grain formed the backbone of nutrition for most communities, supplemented by vegetables, legumes, and occasional dairy or meat when circumstances allowed. This reliance on seasonal abundance and scarcity shaped not only health but also emotional outlook. Each harvest carried hope, each failed crop carried quiet dread. You kneel beside the garden and run your fingers through the soil. It feels warm near the surface, yet cool beneath, holding traces of last night's dampness. You sense how much attention this land requires. Weeding, watering, guarding against pests. Every task contributes to a fragile balance between nourishment and hunger. Your respect for these efforts deepens with each passing moment. A curious little fragment of tradition drifts through your thoughts. In some regions, people once hung charms or simple wooden symbols near their crops to ward off misfortune. Whether these objects truly offered protection remains uncertain, yet their presence reveals a profound desire to influence forces that often felt beyond human control. You glance at a carved piece tied to a fence post and feel the quiet weight of such hopes. A basket is placed in your hands. It contains freshly pulled roots still dusted with earth. You carry it toward a low building whose interior smells of grain and dry wood. This is the granary, a structure that stands as both treasure chest and warning. Inside sacks are stacked carefully, each representing labour already spent and labour yet to come. The air feels thick with possibility and agility. Scholarly conversations continue regarding how medieval communities managed food shortages and shared resources during difficult years. Some accounts describe systems of mutual aid and redistribution. Others reveal tensions that arose when scarcity sharpened competition. As you set down the basket and look around at the carefully guarded stores, you sense how survival can foster both generosity and fear. A group gathers near the doorway, speaking in low tones about the weather. Their eyes lift frequently toward the sky, measuring clouds like seasoned navigators. Rain can bless or ruin depending on its timing. Sun can nurture or scorch. Nature here is not background scenery. It is an active participant in every human plan. You follow one of the villagers to a small orchard beyond the granary. Trees stand in quiet rows, their branches heavy with unripe fruit. Bees drift lazily from blossom to blossom, their work as vital as any performed by human hands. You feel the hum of their wings in your chest, a reminder that survival in this era depends on countless unseen partnerships. A slice of dried apple is offered to you. You accept chewing slowly. Its sweetness feels like a rare luxury. Preservation techniques such as drying or salting extend the life of precious harvests, allowing communities to endure seasons when fresh food becomes scarce. Each bite carries the memory of summer sunlight stored for future need. You walk along the edge of the orchard and gaze across distant fields that shimmer beneath the afternoon haze. Somewhere beyond them lies the uncertainty of next winter. You realize how constant this awareness must be for those who live here. Planning does not stretch into abstract futures. It focuses on the immediate horizon of survival. Your stomach tightens slightly as you imagine the long months of cold and limited supply that will eventually arrive. Yet you also sense resilience woven into every routine, seeds saved carefully, tools repaired diligently, knowledge passed from one generation to the next like a quiet inheritance. As the sun begins its gradual descent, shadows lengthen across the garden beds. You return the empty basket and brush soil from your hands. The day has revealed another layer of truth. Food here is not simply consumed. It is anticipated, protected, feared, and celebrated in equal measure. You take a deep breath, tasting the mingled scents of ripening fruit and distant smoke. Somewhere a bell rings faintly, marking the passage of time that cannot be stopped or stored. With steady steps you leave the granary behind, carrying with you a growing understanding of how nourishment shapes both body and spirit in this different reality. The path ahead glows softly in the fading light, guiding you onward into whatever evening will bring. You walk with quiet determination, aware that every meal, every harvest, every anxious glance at the sky forms part of a larger story still unfolding around you. The afternoon light begins to mellow into a gentler glow as you follow a familiar path back toward the cluster of homes. A faint breeze carries the scent of crushed herbs and sun-warmed wood. Somewhere a door closes with a hollow thud. Somewhere else a baby cries, then settles into a soft rhythm of breathing. You feel the day shifting its weight, preparing to lean toward evening. Near the edge of the settlement, you notice a group of women gathered beside a long wooden table set under a rough shelter. Their hands move constantly, spinning, kneading, mending, sorting. Each motion is purposeful yet fluid, as if shaped by years of repetition. You sow your steps, drawn by the quiet intensity of their work. Here the invisible structure of daily life becomes visible through action. A familiar historical understanding comes into focus. Women in medieval communities carried immense responsibility for maintaining households, processing food, caring for children, and contributing to agricultural labour. Their efforts form the backbone of survival, even when formal records rarely acknowledge them. You watch as one woman lifts a heavy sack of grain with practiced ease. Strength here is not an exception. It is an expectation. A wooden spindle spins in steady circles between skillful fingers. Fine strands of wool twist into thread, gathering slowly on the tool like pale smoke solidifying into form. You feel mesmerized by the rhythm. Time seems to stretch and contract with each turn. This simple act will eventually become cloth, then clothing, then protection against winter cold. The chain of transformation feels almost magical. An unusual detail drifts gently through your thoughts. In some regions, spinning was associated with social gatherings where songs and stories passed the hours. These moments blurred the boundary between labour and leisure, creating spaces where community bonds strengthened alongside productive work. You imagine the air filling with quiet melodies as twilight approaches. One of the women gestures for you to sit. You lower yourself onto a bench that creaks softly under your weight. A bundle of herbs is placed before you. The task is clear without explanation. Sort the leaves, remove the stems, prepare them for drying. Your fingers begin to move uncertain at first, then gradually more confident. The scent released by crushed greenery sharpens your senses, bringing a sudden clarity to the fading day. Scholars continue to explore how gender roles varied across regions and centuries, shaped by economic needs and cultural expectations. Some interpretations highlight moments of autonomy and influence. Others emphasize constraint and limited opportunity. As you work beside these women, you sense complexity rather than simplicity. Lives unfold here in shades of resilience, cooperation, and quiet ambition. A child toddles past, clutching a wooden toy carved into the shape of a horse. His laughter rings out like a bell struck gently in the distance. Someone reaches to steady him before he tumbles. Care flows naturally from one pair of hands to another. You realize that nurturing extends beyond individual families. It becomes a shared investment in the future. Nearby dough is being pressed into flat rounds on the table's worn surface. Flour dust rises into the air, catching the last rays of sunlight like drifting snow. You watch as each piece is shaped with practiced efficiency. Food preparation here is both art and obligation. Every loaf represents hours of unseen effort stretching back to the sowing of seed. A kettle begins to sing softly over a small fire. Steam curls upward, carrying a faint sweetness. Perhaps herbs have been added to create a simple infusion that will soothe tired bodies at the end of the day. You feel gratitude stirring within you. Comfort does not arrive in grand gestures. It appears in small offerings shared freely. As shadows lengthen, conversation grows livelier. Stories emerge from memory. Laughter ripples across the gathering like water over stones. You catch fragments of tales about past winters, lost harvests, unexpected joys. Each voice adds another thread to the tapestry of communal identity. You find yourself listening with a quiet sense of belonging. Your hands pause for a moment, leaves sorted into neat piles. You flex your fingers and notice how they have begun to toughen skin, adapting to new demands. There is pride in this subtle change. Participation in such work creates a connection deeper than observation alone. You're no longer merely passing through this world, you're becoming part of its rhythm. The sky shifts toward hues of amber and violet. A bird calls from the roofline, its note echoing softly against timber beams. You feel a gentle fatigue settling into your limbs, balanced by the satisfaction of tasks completed. Evening promises rest, though rest itself will carry its own routines and responsibilities. Someone presses a cup into your hands. The liquid inside tastes faintly of mint and smoke. You sip slowly, letting its warmth spread through your chest. Around you, the women begin to gather their tools and bundles. The day draws its curtain with quiet dignity. You rise from the bench and brush stray flour from your sleeves. A final glance at the table reveals the imprint of countless labours performed in this very spot. Each mark tells a story of perseverance. Each worn edge speaks of lives devoted to sustaining others. With steady steps, you move away from the shelter, following a path now softened by twilight. Behind you, voices fade into murmurs. Ahead, lantern light flickers into being like small stars guiding your way. You carry with you a deeper understanding of how unseen effort shapes the visible world. The medieval evening opens gently before you, inviting you to continue this journey into the gathering night. Twilight settles across the village like a slow exhale. The last warmth of the day lingers in the earth beneath your feet. yet the air itself begins to cool with quiet determination. You follow the glow of lantern light toward an open space where voices gather and soften. Evening here is not a sharp ending, but a gradual folding of activity into new forms. You sense how the rhythm of life continues even as darkness approaches. Near the centre of the settlement, a group of children moves through the fading light with restless energy. Their games have shifted, now shaped by shadows and imagination. One child swings a stick through the air as if warding off unseen foes. Another crouches behind a wooden barrel, stifling laughter that escapes in small bursts. You pause at the edge of their play, feeling a mixture of nostalgia and wonder. A widely recognised aspect of medieval life comes to mind. Childhood often carried responsibilities far earlier than modern societies expect. From a young age, boys and girls contributed to household tasks, tending animals, fetching water, or assisting with crafts. Yet moments of play still emerged between duties, offering brief glimpses of carefree joy. Watching these children, you sense how resilience begins in such moments of freedom. One small figure notices your presence and approaches with bold curiosity. He holds up a carved whistle shaped like a bird. When he blows into it, a sharp, cheerful note pierces the evening air. This simple toy represents more than amusement. It reflects creativity and the human desire to create delight even in modest circumstances. You smile and nod your approval, earning a grin that brightens his entire face. A curious historical detail drifts gently into your awareness. Apprenticeship often began in early adolescence, drawing young people into skilled trades that would define their futures. Learning occurred through observation, repetition, and the steady guidance of experienced hands. As you watch an older child carefully mimic the knot-tying technique of a nearby adult, you glimpse the beginnings of such lifelong paths. You move closer to a small fire where several families have gathered. Its flames flicker upward, painting faces with warm gold and soft shadow. Someone begins to tell a story, voice raying and falling in measured cadence. You cannot catch every word yet. The tone suggests adventure loss and eventual triumph. Oral storytelling serves as both entertainment and education, passing wisdom across generations without the need for written pages. Scholarly discussions continue about how medieval communities balanced discipline and affection in raising children. Some sources describe strict expectations shaped by economic necessity. Others reveal evidence of tenderness and protective concern. As you watch a mother wrap her cloak around a drowsy child, you sense how love persists even within demanding conditions. The smell of roasting grain drifts toward you from the fire. A small pan rests on hot stones, its contents stirred with care. You accept a handful when it is offered, savouring the nutty flavour that feels both simple and satisfying. Food shared at day's end carries a sense of completion, a recognition that effort has earned this modest reward. Nearby, a group of older youths practices tossing smooth stones into a circle drawn in the dirt. Laughter erupts when one lands precisely at the centre. Competition here is friendly yet earnest, reflecting the human urge to test skill and chance. You find yourself drawn into the game for a moment, guided by gestures and encouraging smiles. Your own throw falls short, prompting gentle teasing that feels more welcoming than critical. Lanterns are lit one by one around the open space, their glow expanding the boundaries of the night. Shadows dance along walls and across faces, creating an atmosphere that feels both intimate and expansive. You realize that darkness does not signal inactivity. It invites different forms of connection and reflection. A young girl sits near the fire, tracing patterns in the dust with a twig. She hums softly, lost in her own small world. You wonder what dreams shape her thoughts, what future she imagines beyond the familiar outlines of village life. Hope exists here too, quietly woven into the fabric of daily routine. As the storyteller reaches a dramatic pause, the listeners lean closer, captivated by the unfolding tale. You feel the power of shared narrative drawing everyone together. In a world where written records remain rare for many memory and voice, become vessels for collective identity. The night deepens, bringing cooler air that brushes against your cheeks. You pull your cloak tighter, grateful for its protective weight. Fatigue begins to settle into your bones, yet it carries a sense of fulfillment rather than defeat. The day has revealed much, and there is comfort in knowing that rest approaches. You step back from the fire and glance upward. Stars emerge slowly scattered across the darkening sky, like distant promises. The children's laughter fades into softer murmurs as families begin to gather their belongings. Evening routines call them homeward. With steady steps, you follow the lantern-lit path toward the shelter that now feels familiar. Behind you, embers glow faintly, marking the place where stories and games briefly transform twilight into celebration. Ahead, the quiet interior of the dwelling waits to cradle you through another medieval night. You move forward with growing understanding, ready to discover what tomorrow will bring. The glow of the fire fades behind you as you walk toward the heart of the village once more. Night has settled fully now, wrapping the land in deep blue and silver. Lantern light flickers through narrow doorways. Somewhere an owl calls its voice, rising like a quiet question across the darkness. You pull your cloak closer and feel a gentle shiver travel through your shoulders. Evening is not only a time for rest, it is also a time when thoughts turn toward the unseen. You follow the sound of a bell drifting faintly through the cool air. Its tone is soft yet persistent, guiding your steps along a worn path. Ahead, a sole stone building rises from the earth like a patient witness to centuries of devotion. Its doorway glows with candlelight. You hesitate for a moment, sensing that you are about to enter a space shaped as much by belief as by stone. A familiar historical reality comes into focus as you step inside. Religion permeated medieval life in ways that modern society sometimes struggled to imagine. Faith influenced calendars, laws, social customs, and personal hopes. The church often stood at the centre of community identity, offering both spiritual guidance and practical support. You feel the weight of this presence as you move quietly toward a wooden bench. Candles line the walls, their flames trembling in currents of cool air. Shadows stretch upwards, transforming simple carvings into something almost alive. The scent of wax and incense drifts gently through the room. You lower your head, unsure whether to pray or simply observe. Around you, villagers kneel in silent concentration. Their faces reflect a mixture of humility and expectation. An unusual fragment of medieval belief drifts into your awareness. Many people once carried small charms or relics thought to provide protection or healing. Whether these objects held true power remains uncertain, yet their importance lay in the comfort they offered. You notice a woman pressing a tiny carved token to her lips before tucking it carefully into her sleeve. The gesture feels deeply personal, shaped by hope rather than certainty. A voice rises near the altar, reciting words that echo against stone with measured grace. You cannot follow every phrase, yet the cadence alone creates a sense of calm. Ritual here functions as a bridge between the ordinary and the sacred. You sense how repetition of familiar prayers helps anchor minds in a world where unpredictability often reigns. Scholarly conversations continue about how medieval individuals balanced fear and faith in their spiritual lives. Some sources emphasize anxiety about divine judgment. Others highlight trust in mercy and communal solidarity. As you watch candlelight flicker across bowed heads, you feel both emotions present. Belief offers reassurance, yet it also reminds people of forces beyond human control. You slide onto a bench and rest your hands on its worn surface. Generations have sat here before you, leaving subtle grooves in the wood. The thought creates a quiet connection across time. You imagine whispered confessions, shared celebrations, and silent tears absorbed by these very walls. Sacred spaces often serve as repositories of collective memory. A child fidgets beside his mother, eyes wide, as he studies the stained glass window glowing faintly above the altar. Coloured shapes form images of saints and stories that guide understanding through visual language. In an era when literacy remains limited, for many such images speak volumes. You follow the child's gaze and feel a sense of wonder stirring within you. The service concludes with a final blessing. Villagers rise slowly, exchanging soft greetings as they prepare to step back into the night. You linger for a moment, reluctant to leave the warmth of candlelight and the hush that surrounds it. Spiritual life here does not end at the doorway. It continues in daily choices, in acts of kindness, in the courage to face uncertain futures. Outside, the stars shine with greater clarity now. The bell falls silent, leaving only the whisper of wind across rooftops. You take a deep breath, tasting cool air, touched by distant smoke. Faith, you realize, is woven into the very atmosphere of this world. It shapes how people interpret joy and hardship alike. As you walk toward the familiar shelter of home, you carry with you a new awareness. The medieval day has revealed another layer of meaning. Belief does not erase struggle. It offers a framework for enduring it. You step carefully along the lantern-lit path, feeling both grounded and contemplative. Behind you, the stone building stands quiet and steadfast beneath the night sky. Ahead, the glow of the hearth promises warmth and rest. You move forward with steady purpose, ready to explore how the realities of health and illness shape life in this different reality as the journey continues. The quiet of the night lingers as you approach the familiar doorway once again. Inside, the hearth glows softly, its embers pulsing like a slow heartbeat. The warmth welcomes you. Yet there is a subtle tension in the air that you did not notice before. Someone coughs from a shadowed corner. Another figure shifts restlessly on a pallet. You realize that the medieval world holds not only labor and faith, but also the constant presence of illness. You set down your cloak and move closer to the fire, listening carefully. The cough returns, deeper this time, followed by a weary sigh. In a life shaped by physical effort and changing seasons, sickness can arrive quietly and remain stubbornly in place. You feel a flicker of unease. Health here is never assumed. It is negotiated day by day with forces that often defy understanding. A widely recognized historical pattern emerges as you observe the room. Medical knowledge in medieval Europe combined inherited classical ideas, practical remedies, and spiritual interpretation. Many people believed that balance within the body determined well-being, influenced by diet, environment, and emotion. Treatment might involve herbal preparations, rest prayer, or the guidance of a local healer whose experience carried more weight than formal training. You kneel beside a woman wrapped in blankets near the hearth. Her skin glistens faintly with sweat. A bowl of steaming liquid rests within reach, releasing the sharp scent of crushed sage and honey. You lift it carefully and help her sip. The warmth seems to ease her breathing. In this moment, healing feels less like a scientific procedure and more like an act of compassion shared between human beings. An unusual detail from medieval life drifts into your thoughts. Some remedies involved placing specific objects beneath a pillow or reciting particular phrases believed to drive illness away. These practices reveal a deep desire to exert control over uncertainty. You glance at a small charm tied with thread at the edge of the pallet and wonder how many hopes have been bound into such simple tokens. The healer arrives quietly, carrying a pouch filled with dried plants and small instruments. She examines the patient with attentive eyes, touching her forehead, listening to her breath. There is confidence in her movements shaped by years of observation. You watch as she mixes a new infusion, her hand steady despite the gravity of the situation. Knowledge here travels through apprenticeship and memory rather than written manuals. Scholarly debate continues regarding how effective medieval treatments truly were. Some historians point to genuine therapeutic value in certain herbs and practices. Others emphasize the limits imposed by incomplete understanding of disease. As you witness the healer's careful work, you sense both possibility and fragility. Recovery often depends on resilience as much as remedy. The rest of the household moves with a quiet sensitivity. Conversations soften, tasks are completed with deliberate calm. You notice how illness draws people closer together, reminding them of shared vulnerability. A child tiptoes past carrying fresh water in a small cup. Even the youngest members of the community learn to participate in care. You sit near the fire and reflect on the physical toll of daily labour. Calloused hands, aching backs, weary eyes. These bodies endure much, yet they also possess remarkable strength. You realise that survival in this era requires constant negotiation between effort and rest. Too much strain invites sickness, too little work invites hunger, balance remains elusive. The healer offers you a sprig of dried thyme to crush between your fingers. Its scent is sharp and invigorating. She explains in gentle tones how certain plants are believed to clear the air or strengthen the lungs. You listen closely, recognizing that knowledge here is often shared through conversation rather than instruction. Wisdom flows like a quiet stream from one generation to the next. Outside, the wind rises, slightly rattling the thatch overhead. Shadows dance along the walls as the fire flares and settles. The patient near you drifts into uneasy sleep, her breathing steadier now. Relief spreads softly through the room. No one celebrates. Gratitude remains subdued, aware that improvement can be temporary. You stretch your legs and feel fatigue seep into your bones. The day has been long, yet the night holds its own responsibilities. You help adjust blankets, add wood to the hearth, and refill the basin of warm water. Each small act contributes to an atmosphere of watchful care. In this different reality, illness serves as a constant reminder of human limitation. It shapes routines, relationships, and the fragile optimism that accompanies every dawn. You sense how deeply such experiences influence the collective memory of a community. Stories of recovery and loss become lessons passed quietly through time. As the fire burns lower and silence settles once more, you lean back against the wall and close your eyes for a moment. The scent of herbs lingers in the air. The rhythm of breathing around you creates a gentle lullaby. Tomorrow will bring new challenges and perhaps renewed strength. For now, you remain present in this shared vigil, aware that health here is both precious and uncertain. The medieval night continues its slow passage, carrying you toward another layer of understanding as the journey unfolds. Morning returns with a pale wash of light that slips quietly through the cracks in the wall. You stir from uneasy sleep, still aware of the night's vigil and the fragile rhythm of breathing that filled the darkness. The patient rests more peacefully now. A faint sense of relief settles across the household like dew. Outside, the world is already stirring. Wheels creak, voices call. Somewhere distant and inviting, a burst of lively sound drifts toward you. You step out into the fresh air and follow the rising hum. Today feels different. The village lanes carry an unusual energy, as though anticipation itself has become part of the morning. People move with quicker steps. Cloaks are shaken free of dust. Children dart ahead, their excitement impossible to contain. You soon discover the reason. A market day has arrived for transforming routine into spectacle. A widely accepted historical observation comes to mind. Periodic markets and seasonal fairs played a vital role in medieval economies, allowing rural communities to exchange goods, news, and services. These gatherings brought variety into lives otherwise governed by repetition. As you approach the open field where stalls have been raised, you sense how such events expand horizons beyond the boundaries of daily labour. Colour greets you first. Strips of dyed cloth flutter from wooden poles. Baskets overflow with apples, turnips, and freshly baked loaves. The smell of roasting meat mingles with the sweet tang of fermented drink. Your senses awaken all at once, delighted and slightly overwhelmed. You wander between tables where merchants call out their offerings in practiced tones. An unusual little piece of medieval life drifts through your thoughts. Travelling entertainers often accompanied fairs, performing songs, juggling acts, or dramatic tales that blended history with imagination. You spot a man balancing on a makeshift platform, his arms raised as he begins to spin bright objects through the air. Children gather instantly, their laughter rising like birds startled into flight. You pause beside a stall where a woman displays small carved combs and polished brooches. Such items may seem modest, yet they represent craftsmanship and the human desire for beauty even in austere circumstances. You run your fingers across the smooth surface of a comb, imagining how it might transform daily grooming into a moment of quiet pleasure. Scholars continue to explore how markets shaped social interaction in medieval society. Some interpretations emphasize their role in fostering cooperation and cultural exchange. Others highlight the tensions that could arise over prices, quality, or competition. As you watch two men bargaining with animated gestures, you sense both camaraderie and rivalry at play. Trade here is as much about personality as it is about goods. A musician begins to play a simple tune on a wooden flute. The melody floats across the field, weaving through conversations and clinking coins. You feel your foot tap lightly in response. Music carries a power that transcends hardship, creating shared moments of joy that linger long after the last note fades. A small group forms, swaying gently in time. Hunger reminds you that excitement does not replace nourishment. You accept a slice of warm bread spread with soft cheese. The flavour feels richer than usual, perhaps because it is accompanied by the energy of celebration. Nearby, a jug passes from hand to hand. Laughter follows each sip. For a brief while, the weight of survival loosens its grip. You wander toward the edge of the gathering where livestock are tethered in neat rows. Buyers examine hooves and teeth with practiced scrutiny. A calf bleats softly, its call answered by the murmurs of negotiation. Animals here represent wealth, labour, and hope for the future. Each transaction carries consequences that will ripple through households long after the fair concludes. A storyteller takes centre space beneath a broad tree. His voice rises above the din, recounting tales of distant lands and legendary heroes. You listen captivated by images of castles, battles, and miraculous journeys. Whether entirely true or partly imagined matters little. Stories expand the boundaries of possibility, offering listeners a glimpse of worlds beyond their own. The afternoon passes in a blur of movement and discovery. You exchange smiles with strangers, share brief conversations, and witness the subtle dance of commerce and community. For a few hours, the medieval landscape feels larger, more vibrant, less constrained by the routines that usually define it. As the sun begins its descent, stalls are gradually dismantled. Merchants pack their wares, performers take final bows. Dust settles where crowds once surged. You feel a gentle sadness at the fading excitement, yet also gratitude for the memory of colour and sound that will linger in quieter days ahead. You turn toward the familiar path home, carrying with you a small token purchased from the comb maker. Its smooth weight in your palm reminds you that even brief moments of wonder can leave lasting impressions. Behind you the field grows still. Ahead the evening light softens into gold and amber. With steady steps you walk back into the rhythm of ordinary life, aware that markets and fairs serve as bright threads woven through the fabric of medieval existence. The journey continues, guiding you toward deeper understanding as shadows lengthen across the land. The last echoes of the market linger in your mind as you walk along the narrow path that winds back toward familiar ground. Evening approaches with a slower, more thoughtful rhythm. Dust settles over footprints. The sky deepens into muted shades of rose and grey. You feel the excitement of the day giving way to a quieter awareness of how life here is shaped not only by nature and labour, but also by rules that govern every movement. Ahead, a small group gathers near a wooden structure that serves as a meeting place. Voices are low measured, deliberate. You slow your steps and listen without intruding. A man stands slightly apart from the others, his cloak of finer weave marking him as someone of authority. He speaks calmly, yet his words carry weight. The atmosphere tightens like a drawn cord. You realize that power here often appears in subtle forms rather than dramatic displays. A broadly acknowledged feature of medieval society comes into focus. Systems of lordship and obligation defined relationships between landholders and those who work the soil. Duties might include labour on shared fields, payment of rents and goods, or coin or participation in communal tasks such as repairing roads and maintaining defences. These expectations structure daily existence as firmly as the rising of the sun. You watch as villagers respond with respectful nods. Some expressions reveal acceptance, others hint at quiet resignation. Authority is woven into the fabric of life-shaping opportunities and limitations alike. You feel a faint unease as you consider how freedom here is measured not by personal preference, but by inherited circumstance. A curious historical detail drifts into your thoughts. In certain regions, disputes were sometimes settled through symbolic rituals such as walking boundaries or swearing oaths upon sacred objects. These practices reflected a belief that justice required both practical evidence and moral affirmation. You notice an elder holding a staff carved with simple markings, perhaps used to indicate land divisions during such proceedings. The conversation grows more animated. Questions arise about harvest shares and the condition of communal tools. You sense how economic survival depends on clear agreements, yet also how tension can simmer beneath polite exchanges. The man of authority listens carefully, his gaze steady. Leadership here involves balancing firmness with the need to maintain trust among those whose labour sustains the entire community. Scholars continue to examine how medieval peasants perceive their obligations. Some accounts emphasize acceptance rooted in tradition and religious belief. Others highlight moments of resistance when demands felt unjust or burdens became unbearable. As you observe the gathering, you feel the complexity of these interpretations. Human reactions rarely fit into simple categories. A young woman steps forward to speak. Her voice trembles slightly, yet her words carry conviction. She gestures toward a field damaged by the recent storms, explaining how reduced yields will affect her household. The man listens, nods, and offers a measured response that suggests compromise rather than decree. Relief softens her posture. You realize that negotiation often unfolds in quiet increments rather than dramatic confrontations. The meeting disperses slowly as twilight deepens. Individuals return to their tasks with thoughtful expressions. You follow the path toward a small rise that overlooks the settlement. From this vantage point, roofs and lanes appear like pieces of a larger puzzle. Power relationships may shape daily life, yet they also rely on cooperation to function effectively. You sit on a fallen log and watch lanterns flicker into being one by one. The sight reminds you that authority is only one element in a complex web of existence. Family ties, shared labour, and personal resilience all play equally vital roles. You feel both humbled and curious, aware that understanding such dynamics requires patience and empathy. A breeze lifts the edge of your cloak, carrying the scent of distant cooking fires. You breathe deeply, letting the moments settle into memory. The medieval world reveals itself layer by layer, each experience challenging assumptions formed by modern distance. As darkness gathers, you rise and make your way back toward the familiar shelter of home. The conversation you witnessed continues to echo softly in your thoughts. Rules and responsibilities shape this landscape as surely as rivers shape valleys. Yet within these structures, individuals still find ways to express agency, compassion, and hope. You step across the threshold and feel warmth embrace you once more. The hearth glows with quiet constancy. Around you, evening routines unfold with practiced ease. You realize that understanding power in this different reality requires looking beyond titles and ceremonies. It emerges in everyday interactions, in decisions made around simple tables, in the willingness to listen as well as to command. With this awareness settling gently in your mind, you prepare to rest and gather strength for what lies ahead. The journey continues, guiding you toward new encounters with authority and independence as the story moves forward. Night passes in quiet intervals of sleep and waking thought. When morning arrives again, it does so with a pale softness that feels almost forgiving. You step outside and notice a faint shimmer of frost clinging to grass and fence posts. Breath leaves your mouth in thin clouds. The world feels sharper today, outlined with cool precision. You draw your cloak tighter and begin to walk along a path that leads toward the distant rise, where stone walls crown the horizon. From afar, the structure appears majestic. Towers wreathe above the fields like watchful guardians. Flags stir in the early wind. For a moment you feel a flicker of excitement. Stories from childhood and whispered tales at the market have filled your imagination with images of knights' feasts and grand halls lit by endless firelight. Yet as you approach, the reality begins to take shape in subtler tones. A commonly accepted historical understanding comes to mind. Castles serve primarily as fortified residences and administrative centres, rather than places of constant celebration. They functioned as symbols of authority and as practical defences in uncertain times. You feel this dual purpose as you cross the drawbridge and step into a courtyard that smells faintly of damp stone and horse sweat. Activity unfolds with quiet efficiency. Servants carry buckets of water. A blacksmith hammers glowing metal into shape sparks rising like brief stars. Soldiers in worn armour move through drills that demand focus rather than spectacle. The grandeur you expected gives way to something more grounded. Life here is structured, purposeful, and often demanding. A curious fragment of medieval culture drifts through your thoughts. In certain courts, musicians and jesters provided entertainment that balanced the solemn responsibilities of leadership. Humour and melody offered relief from tension. You notice a young man practicing a lively tune on a small harp near the entrance of a hall. His music floats upward, lightening the heavy atmosphere of stone and duty. You follow a narrow passageway that leads into the main hall. The ceiling soars above you, supported by dark beams that vanish into shadow. Long tables stand ready for meals that will gather many voices under one roof. Tapestries line the walls, their woven scenes depicting hunts, battles, and moments of triumph. These images serve not only as decoration, but also as reminders of lineage and power. Scholarly discussion continues regarding how nobles balance luxury with responsibility in such settings. Some accounts describe opulent feasts and elaborate rituals. Others emphasize the administrative burdens of managing lands and resolving disputes. As you watch a steward carefully reviewing parchments near the hearth, you sense the weight of governance resting upon even the grandest surroundings. A servant offers you a cup of warm broth. Its flavour is richer than what you have tasted in the village, yet it carries the same essence of sustenance. You sip slowly, observing how hierarchy shapes interaction. Bowed heads, measured gestures. Yet beneath these formalities you also detect shared humanity. Laughter breaks out among kitchen workers when a loaf slips from a tray and lands harmlessly on the floor. You wander toward a narrow window overlooking the countryside. Fields stretch outward like a patchwork quilt stitched into shades of green and brown. From this vantage point, the castle appears less isolated than you imagined. It depends on the surrounding land and people for survival, just as they depend on its protection and leadership. Outside, a horn sounds, briefly signalling the arrival of a rider bearing news from distant villages. Movement quickens. Messages here travel slowly, carried by memory and endurance rather than instant communication. You feel the significance of each piece of information as it passes from hand to hand. As the sun climbs higher, you step back into the courtyard and feel its warmth begin to soften the morning chill. The castle no longer seems like a stage for legend. It reveals itself as a place where authority, labour, and aspiration intersect. You recognise echoes of village life within its walls, magnified yet fundamentally similar. A stable boy leads a restless horse across the yard, murmuring soothing words. The animal's breath steams in the cool air. You pause to watch, struck by the tenderness of the exchange. Even in centres of power, compassion finds quiet expression. Eventually you turn away from the towering walls and retrace your steps toward the path that leads home. The structure recedes behind you, its outline fading into the brightening sky. You carry with you a more balanced understanding of medieval authority. Grandeur exists, but it is intertwined with responsibility and constant effort. The village comes into view once more, smoke rising in familiar spirals from its rooftops. You feel a gentle sense of return. Castles may dominate the landscape, yet everyday life unfolds most vividly among fields and hearths. With steady pace, you move forward, ready to continue exploring the realities that shape this different world. You leave the familiar outline of the village behind with a mixture of curiosity and quiet hesitation. The path ahead stretches like a pale ribbon across fields that fade gradually into distant woodland. Morning light glances off puddles left by recent rain. Each reflection feels like an invitation. Travel in this era is not a casual decision. It requires preparation, endurance, and a willingness to meet the unexpected. Your steps carry you toward the open road, though. Calling it a road feels generous. It is more a track worn into the land by the generations of feet hooves and wooden wheels. Ruts filled with dried mud create an uneven rhythm beneath your soles. You learn quickly to watch where you place each foot. Movement here demands attention rather than distraction. A firmly grounded historical observation comes to mind as you walk. Journeys in medieval Europe were typically slow and challenging, shaped by weather terrain and the limited infrastructure of the time. Most people travelled only when necessity required it. Pilgrimage, trade, legal duties, or family ties might draw them away from home. You feel a new respect for the courage such departures required. The countryside unfolds around you in subtle layers. Hedges mark boundaries between fields. Birds scatter at your approach, their wings flashing silver in the sun. A distant farmhouse stands like a solitary guardian against the horizon. You realize that travel reveals not only new places, but also the vastness of the world beyond daily routine. A curious fragment of tradition drifts into your thoughts. Some travelers once carried small tokens or stitched symbols into their clothing for protection on the road. Whether intended to ward off bandits or unseen spirits, these objects reflected a belief that journeys held both physical and spiritual risks. You touch the seam of your cloak, half imagining such hidden charms within its folds. Midday heat begins to rise, bringing with it the scent of warm dust and crushed wildflowers. You pause beneath a tree whose leaves whisper softly in the breeze. The shade feels like a blessing. You share this moment with another traveller resting nearby, exchanging nods that acknowledge a silent kinship. On the road, strangers often become companions for brief stretches of shared purpose. Ongoing academic discussion explores how travel shaped medieval perceptions of identity and belonging. Some scholars suggest that encounters with unfamiliar customs broadened horizons and fostered adaptability. Others emphasize the anxiety and danger that accompanied movement through contested territories. As you resume walking, you sense both excitement and caution guiding your pace. The track leads you toward a small wayside inn, its sign creaking gently above the doorway. Smoke curls from its chimney, promising warmth and sustenance. Inside, the air hums with low conversation and the clatter of wooden cups. You accept a place at a long table, grateful for the chance to rest aching muscles. A bowl of stew appears before you, rich with beans and herbs. An unusual little detail from medieval travel surfaces in your mind. Inns often served as centres of news exchange, where stories of distant lands circulated alongside rumours and speculation. You listen as a merchant describes a river swollen by spring rains, his gestures animated. Such accounts transform geography into lived experience, guiding your imagination far beyond the room. After eating, you step outside again and feel the afternoon breeze cool against your face. The journey continues, leading you across a narrow bridge where water rushes beneath in a silver blur. For a moment you stop to watch its restless motion. Travel teaches patience. It also teaches humility before the forces of nature. Clouds gather slowly on the horizon, casting shifting shadows across the land. You quicken your pace, aware that storms can turn simple paths into treacherous obstacles. Each mile gained before rain begins feels like a small victory. Your body adapts to the rhythm of sustained movement, breath, and stride finding harmony. As evening approaches, you glimpse the outline of another village in the distance. Lantern light flickers like a promise of shelter. You feel both relief and a faint longing for the familiar hearth you left behind. Travel expands the world, yet it also sharpens appreciation for home. You reach the outskirts just as the first drops of rain begin to fall. Villagers offer directions and brief greetings, their kindness a reminder that hospitality remains a valued virtue. You step beneath a doorway and watch the storm gather strength, grateful for the roof that shields you. The road has revealed its challenges and its quiet rewards. You have felt the pull of curiosity and the weight of uncertainty. As night settles over this new place, you understand that journeys in this different reality reshape not only landscapes but also the travellers who dare to undertake them. With steady breath and a heart both weary and enriched, you prepare to rest and gather strength for the seasons yet to unfold. The story continues, guiding you toward the profound stillness and hardship that winter will soon bring. The storm passes during the night, leaving behind a hush that feels almost sacred. When you step outside at dawn, the world has changed. Frost lies thick upon the ground, whitening fields and hedges with a fragile shimmer. Your breath drifts upward in pale clouds. The air itself seems to ring with stillness. Winter has begun to claim its place in this landscape. You pull your cloak tighter and begin to move, feeling the stiffness in your limbs after days of travel. Each step crunches softly against frozen earth. The sound carries farther than expected in the quiet morning. Even birds seem reluctant to break the silence. You sense how the season transforms not only scenery, but also the pace and mood of human life. A widely recognized historical reality comes gently into focus. Winter in medieval Europe often meant scarcity, reduced mobility, and an increased focus on conserving resources. Fields rested beneath frost. Livestock required extra care. Households turned inward, relying on stored food and shared warmth to endure the cold months. You feel this truth in the way villages you pass keep their heads lowered, conserving energy with deliberate movements. Smoke rises from chimneys in steady grey ribbons. It carries the comforting scent of burning wood and dried peat. You follow the smell instinctively, drawn toward a cottage whose door stands slightly ajar. Inside the hearth blazes with welcome intensity. People gather close around it, their faces flushed by heat. You step in from the cold and feel relief spread through your body like sunlight after shadow. A curious fragment of winter custom drifts through your thoughts. In some regions, families once shared long evenings spinning yarn, carving tools, or telling stories to pass the dark hours. These activities transformed necessity into ritual, creating a rhythm that made endurance feel more purposeful. You watch as an older man shapes a wooden spoon with slow, careful strokes, his concentration unwavering. Outside, daylight remains brief. The sun climbs only a short distance before beginning its descent. This limited span of brightness shapes how tasks are chosen and completed. You notice bundles of firewood stacked near the doorway, each log representing foresight and preparation. Without such stores, survival would become uncertain with frightening speed. Scholarly voices continue to explore how medieval communities coped emotionally with long winters. Some accounts suggest that faith and tradition provided comfort during months of isolation. Others point to tensions that could arise when confinement tested patience and resilience. As you sit near the hearth and listen to low conversation, you sense how both warmth and weariness coexist within these walls. Hunger feels sharper now. Meals grow simpler as preserved supplies are rationed carefully. A pot of thick stew simmers over the fire, its aroma filling the room with a sense of reassurance. You accept a wooden bowl and savour each bite slowly. Salted meat, dried peas, and coarse grain combine into sustenance that must last until spring returns. The cold outside intensifies as afternoon fades. Wind rattles shutters and whispers through cracks in the timber. You help seal gaps with strip of cloth, your fingers numbing despite the heat within. Such small efforts become acts of defense against an environment that offers little mercy. Children huddle together on a pallet wrapped in layers of wool. Their eyes shine in the firelight as they listen to a tale of summer journeys and abundant harvests. Memory becomes a refuge during the bleakest days. You feel hope flicker alongside the flames, sustained by stories that promise eventual renewal. As evening deepens, snow begins to fall in slow, deliberate flakes. You step outside for a moment to watch them gather on rooftops and branches. The world grows quieter still, wrapped in a blanket of white that softens every sound. It is both beautiful and daunting. Winter tests endurance while also revealing unexpected serenity. You return to the warmth of the hearth and settle onto a bench. The rhythm of breathing, the crackle of wood and the steady fall of snow create a gentle lullaby. You realise that survival in this season depends not only on physical preparation, but also on the strength of shared presence. Isolation would make the cold feel far harsher. Night closes around the cottage like a protective cloak. Lantern light glows softly against frost-etched windows. You draw your own covering close and allow fatigue to guide you toward rest. Tomorrow will bring more of the same careful balance between conservation and perseverance. With steady heartbeat and quiet determination, you drift into sleep, aware that winter has shrunk the world yet deepened the bonds within it. The journey continues, carrying you toward moments of light and celebration that will soon break through the long cold. The days of winter stretch onward, in a quiet procession of pale mornings and shadowed afternoons. Yet even within this long season of endurance, something begins to shift. You sense it first in the voices around the hearth. They carry a lighter tone, as though anticipation itself has warmed the air. Outside, snow still blankets the fields, but inside the cottage, preparations unfold with renewed energy. A festival is approaching. You rise before dawn to the soft rustle of activity. Someone stirs embers into flame. Someone else unwraps a bundle of cloth saved carefully for this very occasion. The scent of baking drifts through the room, richer than anything you have tasted in weeks. Your stomach responds instantly, reminding you how precious such moments of abundance can feel after months of restraint. A well-known feature of medieval life comes gently into focus. Seasonal festivals punctuated the calendar, offering communities opportunities to gather, celebrate, and reaffirm shared beliefs. These events often blended religious observance with local custom, creating traditions that varied from region to region. You sense the significance of this day as you step outside into crisp morning air filled with excitement. Lanterns hang from doorways despite the daylight, their coloured glass catching the sun and scattering small fragments of brightness across the snow. Children run ahead carrying branches adorned with ribbons. Their laughter echoes across the frozen ground like music. You follow the sound toward an open space where villagers assemble in clusters, faces flushed with cold and joy. An unusual detail from festive tradition drifts into your thoughts. In some communities, people once donned masks or exchanged playful roles during celebrations, allowing them to step briefly outside the constraints of ordinary hierarchy. Such customs transform the familiar world into a stage for creativity and shared amusement. You watch as a man wearing a simple wooden mask performs exaggerated gestures that send ripples of laughter through the crowd. The air fills with melody as musicians begin to play flutes and drums. The rhythm feels infectious. Feet tap against packed snow. Hands clap in time. You feel your own body responding, drawn into movement that blurs the boundary between observer and participant. Dance here is not polished performance. It is collective expression of relief and gratitude. Scholarly discussions continue regarding how festivals functioned as emotional release in societies marked by hardship. Some interpretations emphasize their role in strengthening communal bonds. Others suggest they allowed temporary suspension of strict social rules. As you join a circle of dancers spinning beneath the pale sun, you sense both liberation and unity shaping the experience. Food appears in generous portions, loaves of fine bread, stews enriched with precious spices, honeyed cakes that taste like sunlight captured in edible form. You accept each offering with quiet astonishment. After months of careful rationing, abundance feels almost unreal. Laughter accompanies every bite as though nourishment and joy have become inseparable. Near the edge of the gathering, elders sit wrapped in thick cloaks, watching with contented smiles. Their presence reminds you that celebration carries memory within it. They have endured many winters. They have witnessed countless cycles of hardship and renewal. Their calm assurance lends depth to the day's brightness. As afternoon wanes, games begin. Children race across the snow dragging wooden sleds. Young men compete in tests of strength that draw cheers from onlookers. You try your hand at a simple contest of balance standing atop a smooth log, while others attempt to nudge you off. Laughter erupts when you lose your footing and tumble harmlessly into the drift. Embarrassment melts quickly into shared amusement. The sky shifts toward a hues of gold and rose. Fires are lit in iron braziers, their warmth drawing people closer as twilight ascends. Songs grow slower, more reflective. Voices blend into harmonies that seem to rise toward the first appearing stars. You feel a gentle peace settle within your chest, as though the festival has illuminated not only the village, but also your own understanding. Eventually the gathering disperses. Lanterns flicker out one by one. Snow absorbs the last echoes of music. You walk back toward the cottage carrying the lingering sweetness of celebration. Winter remains, yet its hold feels less absolute. Shared joy has carved a path through the cold. Inside the hearth glows brighter than ever. Faces shine with contentment as people recount moments from the day. You listen, smiling quietly, aware that such memories will sustain spirits during the darker weeks still to come. Festivals here are more than diversion. They are essential reminders of resilience. You settle onto your pallet and draw the wool blanket close. Outside, wind whispers softly across the frozen land. Inside, warmth and companionship create a sanctuary against the season's severity. With steady breath and a heart lifted by music and laughter, you drift towards sleep, ready to continue this journey into the deeper truths of medieval life. Morning arrives with a pale stillness that feels heavier than usual. The excitement of the festival has faded into memory, leaving behind a quieter awareness of time passing. You step outside and notice how the snow has begun to soften under a tentative sun. Drops of water gather at the edges of roofs, falling one by one in gentle rhythm. Change is underway, subtle, yet unmistakable. You walk along the familiar path towards the small rise beyond the cottages. From this vantage point, the village appears both enduring and fragile, its smoke drifting upward like breath on a cold day. You feel a growing sense of reflection, as though the journey itself is encouraging you to look more closely at the nature of life and its inevitable ending. A widely accepted historical understanding comes into focus. In medieval communities, death was a frequent and visible presence. Illness, accident, and hardship shape shorter life expectancies than many people experience today. Rather than being hidden away, mortality was woven into daily awareness through rituals, prayers, and shared mourning. You sense this truth in the way villagers speak softly when passing the churchyard at the edge of the fields. You follow their path and pause near rows of simple markers set into the earth. Some are wooden crosses weathered by seasons. Others are stones carved with faint symbols that hint at stories now largely forgotten. The ground beneath your feet feels both ordinary and sacred. Generations have walked here carrying grief, hope, and remembrance. An unusual detail from medieval custom drifts gently through your thoughts. In certain regions, communities held processions to honour the departed, lighting candles that flickered like small stars against the darkness. These gatherings created a sense of continuity, linking the living with those who had gone before. You imagine such a scene unfolding beneath winter skies, voices joined in solemn song. A woman kneels beside one of the markers, brushing snow away with careful hands. Her expression is calm yet distant, as though memory has drawn her inward. You stand respectfully apart, sensing that mourning here is both personal and communal. Loss belongs to everyone who remains. Scholars continue to explore how medieval people understood aging and the passage of time. Some sources suggest acceptance shaped by the religious belief in an afterlife. Others reveal fears about judgment and uncertainty. As you watch the woman rise and walk slowly back toward the village, you feel the complexity of these emotions echoing within your own thoughts. You sit on a fallen branch and gaze across the landscape. The sun glints off melting frost, turning each drop into a brief spark of light. Life persists even as seasons shift and generations change. This realization carries a quiet comfort. Mortality does not erase meaning. It deepens appreciation for each moment lived. Nearby children play at the edge of the churchyard, their laughter soft yet unmistakable. They chase one another through patches of thawing ground, oblivious to the weight of history beneath their feet. You feel a gentle smile forming. Renewal often emerges where it is least expected. A bell sounds from the distant tower, its tone resonant and measured. Villagers pause in their tasks, bowing heads in acknowledgement. Sound here becomes a bridge between present action and timeless reflection. You listen until the final vibration dissolves into silence. As afternoon light grows warmer, you rise and begin to walk back along the path. Thoughts of aging linger in your mind, faces lined by years of effort, hands marked by work and care, yet also eyes bright with stories and wisdom. Survival in this era demands resilience that leaves visible traces upon the body. You pass an elder seated outside his doorway, carving patterns into a length of wood. He looks up and offers a nod that feels both welcoming and contemplative. Without words, he gestures for you to sit. Together you watch the sun sink slowly toward the horizon, sharing a moment that requires no explanation. Evening gathers with a gentle inevitability. Shadows lengthens across the ground. Smoke rises once more from chimneys as households prepare simple meals. You feel gratitude stirring within you for the chance to witness this cycle of existence with all its hardship and quiet beauty. When darkness settles, you return indoors and take your place near the hearth. The day has revealed another layer of truth. Life here is measured not only in seasons and tasks, but also in memories carried forward by those who remain. You close your eyes for a moment, allowing the warmth to steady your thoughts. The medieval journey has brought you face to face with mortality, yet also with enduring connection. With slow, steady breath, you prepare for the final reflections that will draw together everything you have seen and felt in this different reality. A soft grey dawn unfolds beyond the doorway as you wake to the familiar crackle of the hearth. The journey you have taken feels both distant and immediate, like a dream whose textures still cling to your skin. You sit upright and listen to the quiet breathing of those around you. Outside the village stirs once more. Smoke begins its slow ascent toward the brightening sky. Another day is beginning, yet something within you has shifted. You step outside and walk toward the rise that overlooks fields stretching into gentle mist. The land seems unchanged at first glance, yet you now notice subtleties that once escaped your attention. The worn path carved by countless footsteps, the patchwork of soil shaped by seasons of effort, the sound of a distant bell marking time that flows without haste. You realize that understanding this world has required more than observation. It has required patience, empathy, and a willingness to set aside comforting illusions. A broadly accepted historical insight settles quietly into your thoughts. Medieval life for most people was defined by routine obligation and deep connection to land and community. Romantic images of chivalry and endless feasts obscure the reality that survival depended on resilience and cooperation. You feel this truth in the strength of your own muscles, in the memory of frostbitten mornings and long hours of shared labour. You recall the laughter of children playing in twilight, the solemn hush of candle-lit prayer, the bright chaos of market day. Each experience has revealed another layer of humanity that transcends centuries. There is hardship here, yes, but also creativity, tenderness, and quiet humour. These qualities emerge not as grand gestures, but as everyday responses to a demanding environment. An unexpected little detail from medieval belief drifts gently through your mind. Some travellers once left small tokens at crossroads as symbols of gratitude for safe journeys. Whether these offerings truly influenced fate is uncertain, yet the gesture reflects a universal desire to acknowledge the unknown. You imagine placing such a token here on this rise, marking the completion of your own passage through time. Ongoing scholarly discussion explores how modern perceptions of the Middle Ages have been shaped by literature, art, and selective memory. Some interpretations emphasize darkness and deprivation, others highlight continuity and ingenuity. As you stand watching sunlight spread across the fields, you sense how both perspectives contain fragments of truth. The medieval world resists simple definition. You turn back towards the village and notice a woman sweeping her doorway with deliberate care. A man lifts a bundle of wood onto his shoulder. A child pauses to study a beetle crawling across the path. These small scenes carry profound meaning. Life here unfolds in gestures that might seem ordinary, yet collectively form a tapestry of endurance and hope. The sky brightens into pale gold, dew glitters on new shoots pushing bravely through soil once hardened by frost. Renewal feels possible again. You inhale deeply, letting the scent of damp earth and distant smoke fill your lungs. The journey has not changed the landscape, it has changed the way you see it. You return to the hearth one last time, aware that departure draws near. The warmth feels different now, no longer simply a refuge, but also a memory in the making. Faces around you glow in the firelight, each expression carrying stories you may never fully know. You offer silent thanks for the lessons shared through presence rather than words. As evening approaches, you step outside again and watch the sun descend in slow majesty. Shadows stretch long across fields that have become familiar companions. You feel neither sadness nor relief, only a quiet acceptance that every journey must eventually reach its turning point. Now the pacing of your thoughts begins to soften. Breath slows. Muscles release their lingering tension. You imagine lying once more beneath rough wool, listening to wind whisper through thatch. The sounds of medieval life fade gently into the background of your awareness. Bells become distant echoes. Footsteps dissolve into memory. You allow the imagery of this world to dim like lantern light at the close of a long day. Frost melts into spring, laughter drifts away on evening air. The hearth settles into glowing embers that pulse with steady reassurance. You sense how the centuries themselves are exhaling, inviting you to rest. In this final quiet moment, you recognize that understanding history is not only about facts or debates. It is about feeling the texture of lives lived before your own. You carry that texture now like a soft blanket wrapped around your thoughts. The night deepens, your eyelids grow heavy. The medieval landscape recedes into gentle shadow, leaving behind only the calm rhythm of your breathing. Let the story dissolve into stillness. Let the past release its hold. Drift into sleep with the knowledge that you have walked, worked, and wandered alongside those who came long before you. Sweet dreams.